All right, take two. This tech for the video piece really hates me, but we're going to give it a go. What is stratification and how does it take place in higher education? From your experience, how can you see it taking place in higher education? Stratification is a system that categorizes people and ranks them according to hierarchy, and that's from the Crash Course video. By being placed in this hierarchy, people are often limited in their ability to experience social mobility through education. And America's system of stratification is a meritocracy, and that is emboldened by the social more of attending college. However, attending college doesn't necessarily lead to a class jump or class climbing. I thought it was interesting that they mentioned that no country in Brown and James on page 6, no country has inequality and high mobility, showing that economic inequality really sets a person up in life battling for movement via social classes. For example, students that come from wealthy backgrounds choose majors that could be more intense and lead to higher paying jobs, and will get better grades in those higher paying jobs statistically because they have the funds to not have to work while going to school, which is interesting. What do you think the pitfalls of massification are? Massification is in higher education refers to the expansion of access to higher education to a larger proportion of the population, and that mostly occurred at the end of the 20th century, and that's according to Hornsby, page 712. This is definitely democratized education, in that it allowed more people to benefit from learning, but overcrowding, reduction in quality, modified teaching approaches, and declining student engagement have absolutely been negative impacts of that. I have experienced the larger class issue at UCSD. And that class was mostly lecture-based, and therefore participation, quality of education, and overall performance dropped, and that was a sentiment felt not only by me, but by multiple students in that class. Number 3, how do you think neoliberalism impacts the school-to-career pipeline? Neoliberalism is characterized by an emphasis on market-driven policies, privatization, deregulation, and the reduction of government spending on social services has significantly impacted the school-to-career pipeline. By emphasizing the private sector within higher education, educational entities were forced to become income-generating and therefore focus more on professional opportunities of students, and that was from the Guillermo and Burke reading 451. However, in many African countries, they're focusing on things that can improve the country in their education. And I found it interesting that in the US, the focus is more STEM because the US wants to maintain global power in sciences and maths, although we're not number one. It's still the focus because, desperately want to be number one. Number 4, what are your thoughts on the anti-DEI efforts? That they're insane, obviously. According to the National Institute of Health, people who are college educated are more likely to lean liberal, especially in social issues, not necessarily in economic issues. And that makes sense as to why they are saying the quiet part out loud, because especially in Florida, the people who are in power will lose power if people vote accordingly after they have been liberalized by just knowing facts. So, in the Stop Woke, God, it's so stupid. The Stop Woke Act literally is hindering literacy and education by not teaching people actual history. And by doing that, educators are afraid to discuss new rules, students are rethinking majors, and Floridians are not going to get any smarter, and anyway, they need help. I hope that changes, but obviously they have to change who's in power first. Number 5, what are your understanding of university rankings and how it might impact access on a global level? In the reading, it talked about the emergence of U.S. rankings, the slow emergence of it, and how the system rised in functionalism post-war, and that was for page 739. By encouraging educational system to focus on rankings and profitability, they began to run hierarchically at the behest of a third party being in charge, which is new, and implications for future students include accounting for institutionalization of rankings, exploring historical entanglement, and investigating their displacement of other methods of university performance evaluation. So, the homogenization of curriculum and research agendas, potentially neglecting local, less commercially viable fields of study, is what's going to happen from that, and we're already seeing that happen. Number 6, how do you think higher education upholds inequalities, and how do you think it challenges it? While it should be a tool for self-evaluation and growth, it can be too focused on job-related skills with high costs that lead to a mismatch economically. As education becomes more expensive and jobs do not pay better, there is a bigger gap in what people can make. And as it's stated in Cromita 7, page 7, that system cannot stand as a sustainable rationale in a diverse global environment. My experience at UCSD, however, is a bit different. I think if more classes are like this and teach students to challenge these economic norms, then we will hopefully use that skill and knowledge post-graduation to change policy and actually maybe better impact future generations. That's my hope. And lastly, think about your perspectives and beliefs. I don't have any real shifts. My perspectives were that I was pretty sure that it was all kind of tied back to capitalism, and it is. But the additional evidence is helpful when navigating people who are under the delusions that, college makes you liberal and woke and whatever, and that liberal is a bad word and all of that nonsense. Facts are always my favorite way to debate those people who I love but who are not very informed, because if they are, talking with good intentions, they're going to be open to facts. That's a big if. I would love to see a more balanced educational experience for all students. I think that UCSD does a good job with this, particularly Marshall College, in requiring doc for all graduates, regardless of major. I think that's really cool, and it's going to give a baseline of historical education that maybe people wouldn't get otherwise if they had a choice. So I think that's awesome, and if we could do that and have a more well-rounded educational system nationally, I think that could be really helpful. Anyway, sorry for the tech issues. I hope this one works. Here's hoping.